Hey, and welcome back to the It'll Be Fine podcast. I'm your host, Erica Bell, and I'm happy to have along my cousin and dear friend, Holly Osborn.
Hi!
Thanks for being here.
Third time is a charm.
Yeah, so for full disclosure, we have tried to record this twice away from each other, and now we're finally together, and we'll see if I'm like, I feel like there's like a reason we're not supposed to record this, but it's such good info.
Right.
And I'm like, no, we're not gonna let the devil win.
Right.
So I do feel like there's a lot of women specifically that I could have talked to regarding this topic, but to me, your journey has been so inspiring, and I just feel like you're the perfect person to talk about this. So let's dive right in. Let's talk a little bit about body positivity, body image, body neutrality, squashing diet culture, all of these things. It can be, maybe a 10-part series, right? So tell me a little bit about your journey, like to where you are, kind of squashing the diet culture, all of that.
Yeah. Okay. So, growing up, I grew up with two parents who were always doing diet culture, always doing a diet. And that was just that was how they were brought up. Right. And so they never talked negatively about themselves, but there was always they were on a diet of some sort.
Yeah.
And then I remember being told don't eat that, or that's enough, or whatever. And they weren't doing it out of malicious intent. It was just, that's how they knew how to help me, right?
Yeah.
They did not want, me and my brother to grow up feeling similar things that they felt growing up, right? And then I had a brother who was super athletic and very, I would say on the smaller size, right? And so I just always felt like I was not good enough. My body was never good enough. I feel like in high school, I hung around athletes, and I always thought I don't have a boyfriend because of my body. Well, no, it has nothing to do with that, right? But at the time, that's how I felt, right?
What's interesting is you're saying you grew up and hung out with athletes, but you too were an athlete. You were a cheerleader, you were a runner, right?
Right. Yeah.
So it's funny that how we see ourselves, you, even though you were doing those things, you're excluding yourself from that label.
Right.
Because you didn't have a quote unquote typical athletic body.
Right. Yeah. And growing up in the 90s and early 2000s, it was you just had to be thin. There was always a diet somewhere. And
what is it? Heroin chic.
Right. I just saw something on a reel, this is plus size back in 2000, and I was like, okay, that's 5 sizes smaller.
Yeah. That's the normal
actual, right. So once I went to college, I really dove into exercise and was on a diet all the time. So basically from the time I was 20 until 38, I was on some sort of plan to modify my body, whether it was a diet or a strict exercise routine or intense exercise. And even throughout having kids, as soon as I was cleared, I was going to try to lose the weight. And so it was about 2 years ago, I broke my foot, and that seriously changed my life. Well, for good and bad, but I could not do anything. I couldn't work out. I felt even if I could work out, I didn't want to work out. And so I decided at that time, well, I should try intermittent fasting. Okay. It took my foot forever to heal. Well, probably because I wasn't giving my body what it needed.
Yeah.
Right. And intermittent fasting isn't that, but it's not to do when you're trying to heal a broken foot.
Yeah.
So,
and I heard something recently that basically intermittent fasting is the millennials' way of, what's the word, eating disorder. Basically, it's just it's a new eating disorder.
Right.
We branded it.
Exactly.
We marketed it as it's starvation.
Yeah.
It's not listening to your body's cues. Now, I will say, that like my husband Jeff does
Yep.
fasting, but it's not as like strict as I think some people do it.
Right.
And he feels really good with how he does it.
Yeah.
And I think there's ways to do it. And we've also talked about this, that like intermittent fasting a lot of times is made more for like a male body.
Yes.
And so anytime I think we try to compare ourselves to anyone, but let alone like the opposite sex. It's
right.
Like, you can't do the same things and expect the same results.
Right.
It's completely different in our makeup.
Yes, exactly. And I bought into it too.
Yeah.
And for some things it really helped.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was kind of like my turning point, where when I finally stopped doing that and I gained back, double, then that's what they say, right? You go on a diet, you gain back double what you were. Then I think it was about just exactly a year ago when I was like, I have got to stop. Like, I'm almost 40. I don't really want to have to worry about what my body is looking like all the time. Like, I want to be healthy, but I don't want to put myself through this anymore.
Yeah.
And then I had to really turn inward and be like, okay, this isn't just like about changing routines and whatever. This is about, why do I feel like this? Why do I have such bad body image? And so, then
getting to like the root of the problem versus kind of just masking it almost.
Right, exactly.
So at that point, did you enlist the help of what you found a therapist or found a nutritionist? What do you call her?
I call her my like body image coach, but she's a nutritionist. I did. I reached out to her, and her and I met through Zoom like once a week for a while. And she just kind of helped me process like why I was feeling like this. It's a very like systematic approach where I had to really squash diet culture. Then I had to go into body image, and then I had to do like intuitive eating, which if you're not careful can also turn into a diet, which we can talk about more later. But it was really like I had to sit with some really yucky, gross feelings about my body and about why I was feeling that way.
So how does she help you process those yucky feelings? Because even today, though you're in a good place, I'm sure it ebbs and flows.
Absolutely.
So how does she like work with you to combat like the ickiness sometimes?
Yeah. So like I said, it started with like the diet culture stuff, and like I had to really like intentionally like squash diet culture. So if I ever felt like I should be doing something or I shouldn't do this, like actually like going the opposite way of it, so that I could start to learn that like my immediate instinct shouldn't be to go to like, I need to go on a diet, or I need to whatever, work out more,
go to the extreme.
Yes. So it was starting to like listen to my body, like what do I actually want in this moment? And then, I learned about like self-compassion and how to like really give myself grace. And just like a lot of journaling about, boundaries that I needed to set and things like that.
It truly is like a form of therapy.
Yes.
In a lot of ways.
Yes, I would say so. But, very specific to diet culture and to body image.
Yeah, I think many people can say, okay, we hate where our society is. We hate diet culture. But then in a lot of ways, we don't even realize we're giving into it.
Exactly.
Because it's so ingrained in us.
Exactly.
And I think, I don't know if you feel the same way, but I know like once I had a little girl, then I really start thinking about, how am I talking about myself? How am I talking about food? Because my thing too has always been to be healthy.
Right.
But also over the years, so I grew up as a dancer.
Yep.
I was constantly in tight clothes.
Yep.
I don't know how anyone wears leotards and doesn't look at themselves and say, this should be nipped, this should be tucked, this should be this. You're constantly critiquing.
Yep.
Which I also credit dance for a lot of beautiful things in my life. A lot of confidence, a lot of grace, a lot of whatever it may be. But I also think that any kind of like sport like that can be kind of hard to process too. So, I think after having Pfeiffer, really understanding, yes, I do want to be healthy. And I've always said that. But again, I think I'd be lying to say that it was always only about being healthy.
Right.
You know, because even now, and it's funny, we're doing this on a day where I feel like blah.
Yeah,
like,
right.
Have been totally healthy for the last however long.
Yes.
But yet,
right.
I just don't feel my best.
Right.
I feel just kind of icky.
Right.
And it's like, then of course you're like, okay, well, I don't look the same in my clothes. I don't feel the same in my clothes. You know, so, but I'm very, very careful, again, about how I say things in front of her.
Yes.
But I also need to be careful about how I speak to myself.
Right. And I think that's where, like, you know, it's more about, like, body neutrality versus, like, positivity. Like, that's one thing I've been working through is, like, okay, I don't need to love my body every single day. And to be honest with you, like, I don't. And even leading up to this trip, you know, I was like, oh, I'm just, like, feeling so anxious. And I think a lot of that anxiety, honestly, comes from I'm going to be around a bunch of family that, like, some people I haven't seen in a while. I've gained a lot of weight in the last year. And, like, I'm okay with that because that's a journey I'm on. But, like, how are they going to view me? What if I decide to wear X, Y, and Z? What is that going to look like? And so just being okay with, like, this is my body today, and that's, like, all I need to worry about.
Yeah.
Like, maybe tomorrow I'll feel better. Maybe I'll feel worse. But, like, right now in this moment, where do I feel?
And I do love that shift. I think it was, like, a couple years ago I first heard of that term, like, body neutrality.
Mm-hmm.
And I do really like that. I like that we're not
right.
We're not exactly to feel, like, really positive about things. And that's okay.
Yes,
usually I'd be like, we should be so positive, but it's like, no, in those moments, neutrality is just a really healthy, nice way to see yourself. Because I think if you aren't always, even any kind of positivity, like with your mood, with your body, it's like if you are constantly trying to be like that, you're almost setting yourself up for failure. It's just, you get no sleep at night, you're not going to be as positive.
It's just like the pendulum swing.
Yes.
So I really like the body neutrality. And kind of going back to what you said about your daughter. So my daughter's, you know, she's built very similar to me. And I have to work really, really hard to not project, like, my experiences of, like, childhood onto her. And I find that to be really, really hard because I'm like, oh, I don't want you to have to go through this, right? And it's like, no, like, she's going to be fine. And I hope that when she's a teenager and an adult, like, the world has changed a little bit so that it won't be like that. But
I think in some ways it is changing.
Yeah.
You know, when we were growing up, we never saw mannequins that were anything but teeny tiny, unless they were in a plus size section.
Exactly.
Now it's like, I walked into Target the other day and it was like a main display, a normal looking mannequin. It was like, oh, this is what it looks like a normal person.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, I like that. But then I still think there's so much work that has to be done, especially now this can totally go for another episode, but like, especially with all this AI stuff and filters, and it's like, we're trying to project this perfect image. That really scares me.
Right.
But I think teaching them what's real and what's not. And again, just being healthy and making healthy choices for themselves. Not this is good or this is bad.
Right.
But I the same thing. Pfeiffer has almost my same body. And it is wild, even at 5.5 years old, that I can see that.
Right.
And I'm already like, oh, God, I hated that about my thighs, or I hated that about my belly, or I hate, you know, and I'm like, and she just freaking loves her body. She put her in a tube top. She wants to wear a tube top when it's 40 degrees outside. Let her belly hang out. And I'm like, yes, girl.
Yeah, exactly.
And I want to keep fostering that. Because it's not until someone else tells us. Like.
Something. Right.
Well, you know, it's like. So I want to do what I can to foster that kind of confidence. And in turn, she has really taught me, I think, too, to be more confident.
Yeah.
It's like, so it's
really
inspiring.
Like,
when you see someone else loving themselves, it helps you to be yourself.
Right. Exactly.
It like opens. So it's really,
and I would say that's very similar, like with my daughter and I. I mean, not a care in the world. She, like, you know, she's just like wears whatever she wants to. Yeah. Doesn't matter. But in my mind, I'm like, okay, like when she's gonna go to prom, is she gonna have a hard time finding a dress? What the hell? Yeah. Like that's the least
Yeah, exactly. That's a long
So it's just so funny how we are, right, about it. And yeah, there's just definitely like boundaries that have to be set and just societal norms that we need to break.
And it's interesting though, because like, okay, so my friend who used the same therapist, the same nutritionist, body image coach, so she remembers the things that her mom would tell her, and it was never "you're fat." It was never those words.
Right.
I never heard those words. You never heard those words. No. But it's interesting because she still interpreted the fact that there was something that needed to be changed about her body. So her mom would say, pull your shirt down, your belly's showing.
Yes.
We've all probably said that or thought that or whatever.
Exactly.
And to her it was, hey, she just wants to be modest, don't show any skin.
Yes.
And what's interesting, she found herself talking to her daughter like that. And she's like, I gotta cut this. Because she's like, how I internalized it was, you know, she always had very large breasts. And she was like, this didn't fit, this was too tight, or my belly was hanging out. Like and her mom probably didn't, well, her mom had her own diet culture. And she grew up in that too. But like, it's interesting that her mom didn't really mean you look fat in that.
Exactly.
But how she internalized it. Yeah. Or like, hey, that's bunching wrong, or something, you know, it's too tight or under, you know, it's like, as parents, we're trying to be, but it's just so different, like how everybody interprets it, right? Like I had a friend who was kind of asking me about my journey and like intuitive eating and all that stuff. And I said, well, here's the deal. Like if you have one cookie, you can like eat that cookie and it doesn't even like faze you. But I was like, if I eat the cookie, immediately I'm like, oh my God, I need to go work that out. Or, oh my gosh, tomorrow I need a salad. And that's where I was like, I don't want to keep doing this. Like, why can't I just like eat normally and feel fine with it? You know? And last night, I had 4 damn cookies. And I didn't feel one bit bad about it. Well, and it's interesting, like we talked about this over the holidays, so many people are concerned with their weight gain over the holidays. And again, if you're eating these rich foods, we're eating out of the norm, you know, probably for a lot of people drinking alcohol. Right. Just things that are out of the norm. Right. But really what they say you get, if anything, it's like less than a pound. Yeah. Which is wild. Yeah. It's like, so it's really not that big. And it's so funny because sometimes like if you are having a craving and you're like, okay, I just really want ice cream. I just really want ice cream. And then you're like, all right, I'm going to have a piece of fruit. Yeah. You eat the fruit and you're like, I'm not satisfied. Exactly. And then you eat something else and you're like, I'm not satisfied. If you were to have just had the bowl of ice cream, sometimes it's like, okay, I literally had one scoop and that satisfies the craving and it is what it is. Exactly. But I think it takes a while to get to that point of intuitive eating. So let's talk a little bit about that because I think for most people, they don't understand their bodies. No. They don't understand when they're hungry versus thirsty versus tired versus anything. Yeah. So how do you kind of get to that ground zero where you know your body? Lots of work. A lot. I mean, like, so I went through like an intuitive eating course, I guess you would say. And there's like 10 steps to intuitive eating. So a lot of people just think it's like, oh, I just need to like, you know, only eat like sitting down, or I only should whatever eat at this time of the day. And it's like, really, you have to like look at, am I satisfied? Am I full? Like, how's my body going to react to this? And then same thing with like just body image. Like there's a lot of body image stuff within that course too. But yeah, I feel like it's just like eating what your body feels like it needs. And when I first started it, it was almost like I mentioned with, I can't remember what else we were talking about, but like with intuitive eating, I had to just like eat whenever I felt hungry or whatever I felt like I had to eat it. And so I did gain weight because I needed to learn, like, I can't restrict myself from that. But over time, you just start to learn, like, it's like, oh, I feel like I want chips. Well, like, I maybe have like 2 chips because that's all I need. And so even though like I started eating a lot and I gained weight, eventually over time, it kind of like evens out. And you don't even have to think about
it because it's just there. Like, and speaking of holidays, this was my first holiday doing this. I found myself eating way less sweets than ever in the past.
That is so interesting because you weren't restricting yourself.
Yes, because I would just like, you know, we made our cookies or whatever, but the whole month of December in the past, I would be like, okay, I need to like try to look good for whatever. And this year I was just like, I'm just going to eat normal. And yeah, I remember like thinking at the end of all of it, like I barely had any cookies.
Yeah.
And right. Yeah, it is. It's wild. And so it's just about trusting your body, right?
Yeah.
And that's the other thing is like, we talked about this before, but like when I stepped into this journey, I was like, okay, like I'm ready to do this and it's going to be really freaking hard work. Mm-hmm. And it's very scary. Like it's very scary to know that like, yeah, I'm probably going to gain weight and I'm probably going to have some big feelings come out. Yeah. But like now after getting through it, I'm like, it's okay. Like I made it through and it's fine. Yeah. But you have to be ready for that.
Yeah.
You know, I think a lot of people are like, oh yeah, I'm ready to like squash diet culture. And oh yeah. Like I hear that all the time now because that's just like the new thing. Right. Mm-hmm. But it's like, are you though? Like, cause you're still sitting here talking about how you look or this outfit doesn't fit you or whatever.
You don't even
exactly.
Exactly. Like, oh shoot, that is not
right.
I'm so giving into that.
Right. And it's not for everybody. I get that. Like, you know, some people they're not ready for that journey. And that's okay. Like they can be there. But yeah, it's just like I cannot do this anymore.
But it's so interesting, like my friend who I referenced, like she with trying to like figure out what your body really needs and wants. She was like, because I could eat ice cream all the time. She said, I ate so much ice cream. And she was like, but then I was just being like gluttonous almost. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, she was like, and like you said, it does kind of, it is this pendulum swing at first. And then you kind of find the middle of like, I can have whatever.
Right.
We've always been able to eat whatever the fuck we want.
Right.
We just haven't felt like
exactly.
that.
Well, like we're born intuitive eaters.
And that is very interesting.
Yeah. But like it's not until you start eating or like you can control your own food that then like we're just born like that. So
I mean, I noticed with Viper, she's like, my body is telling me I don't need to finish this cupcake because I'm going to feel sick.
Yeah.
And I'm like, which first of all, like I don't know at what point kids lose that because I see a lot of kids who like they will eat until they want to throw up.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Right.
But like I'm like that is inspiring. I was like, I know a lot of adults that even do that.
Right, exactly.
But she doesn't have that scarcity mindset of like, well, I'm never gonna have sweets again. Like we sometimes do if we're on a diet. It's like, oh, this is my quote unquote cheat day, so I'm just it's like.
Well, and that's the whole, like the whole thing with diet culture. It's like you're just starving, in a sense, or depriving yourself of something. So, when you can eat it again,
there's so many restrictions with it and rules.
Right, exactly. And I think that's getting over the rules is like the hardest. You know, like even like going out to eat in big groups. It's like people are having salads or like whatever, or they're only ordering appetizers. I'm like, frick, I want a big ass, whatever, bowl of pasta, you know? And so that was like, it was just like, I had to put myself in like situations where that was a real thing to kind of like get through it.
But what's funny is I've never looked at someone else ordering stuff and been like, gosh, you're going to order that big of a meal?
No.
Never in my life have I cared about that.
Never.
Like, so why
is it so funny how like,
but it's just you want to fit in with the group.
Absolutely,
that is from evolution. That's deep rooted because that is for real. You don't want to get kicked out of the group,
right?
Kicked out of the herd. Yeah, it's like so. How do I blend in? How do I be a part of the group?
Exactly.
But, so tell me about some of the boundaries that you have had to like put into place.
Yeah. I mean, like the biggest, I would say there's two like big ones. One has been like just kind of who I surround myself with at certain times. Like I work with all women and I feel like most of us are like 20s, 30s. And so there's still a lot of talk in the office about like, oh, I don't like what I'm wearing today, or oh, like I feel bloated. And so I just have had to like step away.
Yeah.
Because it's just, I'm like, yeah, you can feel like that. That's totally fine. But like, I don't care to, do that.
You have to protect your own peace.
Exactly. And kind of with that, like, I've gotten rid of like a lot of social media accounts that I follow, even some that are like good friends of mine or like acquaintances of mine that I'm like I don't want to feel like every day I have to like work out because somebody else is. In fact, even this morning you had finished like a workout and our cousin was like, oh, she just finished a workout. I'm like, yeah, I don't even have that like notification anymore. Because I'm like,
yeah,
it would just trigger something in me like, oh, well, like Erica worked out, so I should work out, right? And so I just have kind of like gotten away from like anything that could be like triggering to me like that. I just let go. And then the other big boundary is like shopping. Like I love to shop, so I'm trying to find, options for like clothing that is maybe more like plus size or that fits my body better. And we've talked about this on our last 2 attempts to do this, but there's a store I like love in where I live, and they just like don't carry any bigger sizes. I mean, they carry a little bit, but such a like minimal selection. And then plus their plus size section is in a completely different area of the store than anywhere else. So it's super frustrating because I'm comfortable with what I'm shopping for, but at the same time, like I'm with my friends, I want to shop with them.
Yeah.
They're not. Yeah, exactly. And then, like, I'm not going to lie. Sometimes there can be like shame associated with that, right? So it's like,
we'll talk about being singled out. It's
exactly.
Like, I'm going to go over to this section.
Right. And so I actually reached out to them because I was like, I feel like you're like a local small business. Like you should hear this information.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like it didn't really feel super supportive. They have like a reason for why they do it, and that's fine. But I was like,
but if more people do those kinds of things and there is a need for it, then hopefully they would.
Exactly.
But yeah, it's like, why do we even have a quote unquote plus size section?
Exactly.
It's one thing to have a maternity section because your body totally changes. You do need different things. But like, why?
Right.
And it wasn't until we started talking about that I'm like, yeah, why is it not just all intertwined?
Right. And I get it. Like, sometimes I guess, like, you want to go to, like, just one area and shop, but, like...
Yeah, I'd love to go and only look at my size clothes.
Exactly.
But, like, that also doesn't really make sense.
No.
So,
yeah, I don't know. So, that was, like, a boundary where I was just like, okay, I need to... And now I don't shop there as much, and, like, kind of sucks, but, like, I don't really shop with my friends there either. But... I go elsewhere and that's fine. So, so those are kind of the big boundaries, I feel like.
It's interesting. I was reading this quote about social media. It's like basically if what you're looking at doesn't make you smarter, make you happier, it was like these other things, like, then why do you have these accounts? And I was like,
right.
Well, that's a no-brainer.
Exactly.
Like, why do we?
Yes.
Go down...
Right.
Like, you really have to watch what you're consuming and what you don't, and it's like mindless stuff.
Right. And I'm not, like, huge on social media, and I'm not an influencer by any means. But, like, I feel like because as society we're trying to get away from diet culture, right? People are marketing themselves as more, I don't know, like non-diet, whatever. But still within that, they're sending the message of, like, no, this is diet culture. It just looks different. And so you have to be super careful about what you're consuming, you know? Because, it's like, I can follow somebody who supposedly is like an intuitive eater, but all of it could be focused towards like losing weight. Yeah. And that's what, like, I really don't want to be, influenced
anything.
by.
It's like just the person.
Exactly.
So look at the person. Exactly. If they're even saying anything about it, it's like you're not on the right path.
Right.
But it's interesting too because I think sometimes people, or I don't know, like if you are thinking about like squashing diet culture, it almost, and we've kind of talked about this too. Again, it ebbs the other way where it is kind of this like gluttonous where you can like I'm eating whatever I want and you just need to love my body for whatever. It's like first of all, I don't need to do anything with your body.
Exactly.
And you don't need to tell me about your body. And like,
right.
But also, it's like that's almost too far.
Yes,
too.
Absolutely.
So again, I think it's about being healthy.
Yes.
And everyone's idea of healthy, of course, can look a little bit different. Right. But like if we want to be giving our bodies what they need,
right?
Not just I am who I am. I do whatever I can. Well, please. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Right.
I feel like we see that too.
Yeah. You go the complete opposite. And I
like you better love me. I'm like either you better love me. I'm a size 0, or you better love me. I'm a size 20.
Exactly.
Like, I mean, I'll love you no matter what. But if I'm going to be following something, it's got to be someone like who is being healthy,
right?
And intentional.
Right.
It's like
right. I think it's super important to like get your blood drawn and like go to the doctor, right? And so like I make sure I do that, and as long as my numbers are good, I'm like, okay, inside, right? Like my body is healthy, and like we don't like my husband is an amazing cook. We do not eat out like ever. I would say I like move my body at least 5 days a week in some capacity, right? So it's not like I'm a unhealthy person, but I've always wanted to be, like I want to be thinner. I want to wear the crop top. Well, like who says you can't wear the crop top, right? Yeah. But I agree. Like there are people out there who do take it to the extreme, and I think it's just again being super like compassionate and aware of like what your body needs in that moment, And
it's interesting, like you kind of find your, I don't know, what's the term for it? Not your like, I guess your quote unquote normal body weight.
Yes.
Like a lot. Is there a better term for that?
No, I think that's,
So I think a lot of people probably don't know truly what their body weight is quote unquote supposed to be. So like, and I shouldn't say, I don't want to say supposed to be, but there is a weight that your body just is naturally going to be at.
Right.
Without one way or the other. Without eating too much or without starvation.
Exactly.
And it's that like neutral kind of, without adjusting it one way or the other. And I think that is a beautiful place to be. I think a lot of people try to, trust the scale. And it's like, okay, well, I know I'm supposed to be 130, so I need to be 130. It's like, first of all, who says?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, we have these numbers in our head, and they're arbitrary. I know for me, they always were. Yeah. It's like, okay, I'm going to be 110 pounds. Well, why?
Right, exactly.
No one has ever walked up to me and said, you would look better if you weighed 5 pounds less.
Exactly.
Never in my life.
And how much are you going to like kill yourself to get to that point?
And to what extent? Because I've been at that point.
Exactly.
And it still wasn't.
Right. Exactly. It still wasn't. And we've talked about that. Like, I have had many moments looking back in pictures where I'm like, oh my God, I was so thin, right? Or fit or whatever it was. And it's like, I can remember vividly in that moment thinking, this isn't small enough. So again, and then like in 10 more years from now, I'm going to look back at now and be like, oh, like you actually looked really good.
Yeah. But so I think it's a nice place to like, and I've never really been a fan of the scale. It's like, I know I have been pretty good about, okay, this is where my body naturally lies.
Right.
I don't need to step on a scale. I know how I feel.
Exactly.
Like I know if I'm amping up my sugar, I just feel like crap. And so I just don't like to do that. Right. Or, it's like you can kind of get those cues from your body if you're listening, but it takes a long time. But that's not to say that I still, when I go to the doctor and they weigh me and it says a certain weight, I'm like,
I know.
Do I want to be that?
But it's like, why do they even have to do that? Sometimes, like I was telling you, I went in for a damn eye infection. Yeah. And they were like, can we weigh you? No. I was like, this is nothing to do.
Unless you're going to prescribe something that you need to weight.
Right. I was like,
what does that have to do?
Exactly. So it's just ridiculous how we use a scale as that. And then like, even like I have a friend who went through like infertility, and she talks about now how like her medical chart still says infertility, even though she's had 2 kids. But I looked at my medical chart the other day, and yeah, it said like overweight. And I was like, sure, that's fine. But like, why does my chart have to say that?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
Like, on my numbers, my cholesterol's fine. Everything's fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
So why does that have to say that? It's just,
you're like,
I don't know. It's just crazy to me. And my daughter is the same thing. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. If you want to have her have this diagnosis at such a young age as being like overweight or obese, like to get her the treatment that she needs. But like as soon as like we reach a quote unquote normal body mass, like I want that gone. Like I don't want her to have to think about that when she's 38 years old.
To her to have that branding.
Exactly.
And it's like, because even if she is confident, once you start hearing these terms,
exactly,
it messes with your head.
Right.
So again, it's about teaching our kids like how to make smart, healthy choices for themselves.
Exactly.
You know, giving them the tools they need, filling them with like healthy choices and all of that.
Yeah.
But you know, and like back to the scale, like I'm big now. I'm trying to gain muscle and get more like tone, and muscle weighs more than fat. So it's
exactly.
Or like even I've noticed lately, it's like, oh, I really like how I've been working out my legs more. They look great, but then I put on pants and they feel tight, and I'm like, well, that is kind of
right.
If I'm gonna gain muscle, I may have to go up a size jeans, but it's going back to that.
Oh,
whoa! I'm changing a number.
Right.
And it's like, okay, that's crazy, but who's looking at my jeans?
No one's saying. Nobody.
You change, like, you change sizes.
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't think that there's anything wrong with like trying to better your body. Like if you want to gain muscle,
absolutely,
or if you want to be more flexible, or that type of thing, I think that is fine.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's when it gets too extreme.
Exactly.
And you said something before about, like, am I controlling my body?
Oh, right, yes.
Or am I caring for my body?
Yeah.
That to me is like if you get nothing else from this podcast, take that saying with you. Am I in this choice of what I'm putting in my body as far as food or exercise? Am I trying to care for my body, or am I trying to control my body?
And that's been like kind of like my go-to model this whole time, right? Because like I'll wake up sometimes in the morning and I'm like, geez, like I am tired. I don't want to go work out. Like I don't want to even go to that yoga class. Okay, you know what? I'm not going to go. Like if it's going to cause me more anxiety to think about like, oh, like my body doesn't feel like it wants to do this, then that's not like where it should be. Yeah. Right? Yeah. And so I do try to like be intentional about that.
But it takes time.
Because 100%.
Because if you're not at the point where you truly know your body, it's like you could just be being lazy. You know?
Exactly. Right.
Or am I masking this or something else?
Exactly. Or like, am I doing this because everybody else is doing it?
But once you know your body, and like, I'll sometimes be like, okay, I really was planning to do yada yada workout, and I get to that day, and I'm like, no, you know what my body needs is just like cardio or fresh air, and I just need a walk, or ride my bike, and it's like listening to that. But again, it just takes a long time. It takes patience, and it probably takes a coach, or it takes some support,
right? Yeah, because like, I mean, I mentioned this a couple of times, but like, right, your body naturally gets to the weight that it wants to be at. And so like for me, that was a lot higher than what I was ever used to. But it goes down. Like my body went up, my body weight, or like how I perceived it maybe did. And now it's like neutraling out a little bit, right? So yeah, it's like you need support because you can get to a dark place where you're like, no, I need to go work up, work this up. And I've had moments like that, you know, random moments where I'm like, oh gosh, like I can't find a dress for this. So I better like go. Yeah. What the hell? I'm not going to lose 50 pounds in a day.
But that's also like intrusive thoughts, because even if you were a size 0, you still may not find anything that you like. It just is what it is.
Exactly.
Right. But we internalize it as like, oh, this is because I don't like how I look, and because I look bad.
Right.
Bad.
And like, why can't we just wear clothes that we just look good and feel good in.
Yeah.
Even if it's, I was just shopping the other day in the same store. I got something that was a size medium and something that was an XXL.
I know. Listen, don't get me started. That also could be another. So,
whatever.
Size is so ludicrous. A size small means so many different things. Right. And we do have to kind of get rid of some of that. Like, I like wearing, I've always liked wearing like oversized stuff. Yeah. And so like having a size large sweatshirt. I have a men's small shirt that I brought.
Exactly.
You know, it's like that doesn't necessarily bother me, but it's interesting certain things that do. Like the pant size. Yeah. You know, like, wait a second, my booties get bigger, which I like. Yeah. But that means I'm gonna have to switch. You know, it's like we all have our triggers. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just wild how like the world has evolved with just all of it. You know.
Yeah. I mean, I want to be hopeful.
So do I. Yeah. And maybe it is changing a little bit.
I think it is.
Yeah. But you just have, it's like so individualized and you really just have to be like, really know, like you said, your body and what it needs.
Yeah. But I think even if you're not going to hire a coach or you have very little support or whatever. Right. Asking yourself, am I doing this because I want to care for my body better? Or am I doing this because I'm trying to control my body?
Right. Exactly. That's been really a helpful tool. Yeah. Like just with everything. So.
Is there any other tools that you're like, this changed my life besides hiring someone, which we'll put all of her information. Yeah. Like any books, any podcasts, any like.
Yeah. And I can like give you the information. Yeah. So I really did like fully immerse myself. Yeah. Like I think I met with her weekly for like 4 months. Yeah. And then after that, it kind of just, you know, it was like every other week or as needed. And now I haven't met with her in a while, but I had to like really invest the time and the energy into it. So like every book I read, every podcast I listened to, and you almost get to a point where it's like oversaturation of it. But I feel like that was good. That was what I needed.
But also, you're undoing 20 years of something.
Yes,
you know exactly. What I mean? So, like, 4 months of really freaking hard work is not a lot.
Exactly.
When you think about it.
You
know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, like, I think knowing that, like, it has taken a long time to get to where you are. Right. So, be patient with yourself if it takes longer than you want.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
That's like with anything.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think you're right. Like, it is nice to be able to, like, kind of totally submerge yourself in or immerse yourself in those things. Right. It's like learning another language. You're like, okay, just give me, I want to listen to this in another language. I want to this book, or, you know, traveling somewhere, whatever. Yeah. It's like, let me find out as much as I can. Right. And then, but then now it's just, you're just
and like, you know, journal through all of it. But it is funny, just like with anything, like, even 4 months in, I was like, I just like don't feel like I've made the progress. And she was like, girl, like look at all the things you've done, right? But like in my mind, I'm like, oh yeah, like I guess
that's why journaling is important because you look back and you're like, oh,
right,
like I didn't realize that. Like when I first started going to therapy, not like a weight specific thing, but just to a therapist. Yeah. I started keeping like a log of stuff because it's the same thing. Yeah. It's like, I was like, is this doing anything? Yeah. And I look back through my notes, I'm like, yes, it is. Yeah. So we doubt ourselves, but these things like,
I know.
Yes, you've come a long way. Or I do that with my business. I do that with a lot of things. Right. It's like, I'm not really doing that much. Yeah. It's like, sometimes because it's this gradual change, you don't realize how good of a job you're doing.
Yeah, exactly. And I agree. Like the journaling was excellent. Yeah. It just really helped me be like, oh, yeah, like I would have never done that. Yeah. You know, like I think last year when we went on our cousin's trip, I was like, oh, I just want to like wear a crop top. Well, now I'm like wearing a crop top. Yeah. So it's like, well, whatever. Look at you. And I'm like, if you don't like it, don't freaking look at me. Yeah. But again, nobody has ever been like, I don't ever think anyone's outright said anything to me. I've never heard the word heard like you're fat ever. Yeah. But in my mind I have, so.
I know. Again, you want to be able to fit in and you don't want to do anything that's like, takes you away from the crowd. You know, I mean, it's just, that's another shit. Right. That's hard. So. Right.
Yeah. I'll get to it, get there eventually where I'm like fully like, okay, but you know. It's a process.
Yeah, it is a process, just like anything else.
Yes.
Any other words of wisdom to the listener out there?
No, I mean, it's just everybody's journey is like their own. So, what I'm saying is like may not be the right journey for someone else, and that's okay too. You know,
don't be afraid to get help. Don't be afraid to like use the resources.
Right.
Ask yourself the question we keep talking about.
Right.
Like, know that if you are struggling with this, like there is a better way.
Yeah.
To live in a process and just have patience and grace.
Right.
With yourself, just like with any other journey.
Yeah, exactly. So, and you can be happy and eat the 4 cookies.
Yeah.
You know.
Exactly.
Not kill yourself.
Yeah. Well, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Come back anytime.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. All right. Thanks for listening. I will talk to you guys soon.